and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to start with Addie. So, Addie was born a slave on a North Carolina tobacco plantation. So, in her first book, we meet her, her mother, her father, her older brother, Sam, her little sister, Esther, their master, what's the master? Master's name? Master Stevens, her auntie Lula and her uncle Solomon, who are basically an elder couple who help look after Addie's family, and then Miss Caroline, who's the woman on the Underground Railroad who helped Addie and her mother. So it starts off with Addie overhearing her parents talking about running away. Her father is afraid the family is going to be split up. Her brother had run away and gotten in trouble. He's 15. He'd gotten a lashing pretty severely. Her mother thinks they should wait. The war will be over soon. Her father doesn't agree. He doesn't like seeing Addie having to work so hard. So that's kind of how it starts. Next day, Addie's father's worst fears come true. Him and his son are sold. Addie tries to warn them, but is not able to get there in time. She's later reprimanded by the overseer and made to eat some of the tobacco worms she's been picking, which is disgusting. That's one of her jobs, and the other children is to pick off tobacco worms off the tobacco plants, basically the parasites, as well as deliver water. And then sometimes she helps at the house. So that night, her mother tells her, it's like, we're running away. We're leaving your baby sister, who's 1 year old, with Auntie Lula and Uncle Solomon because we can't. If her father had still been there, they would have been able to take the baby, but her mother can't help her, can't carry the baby, can't carry a toddler by herself, and Addie can't really help. So they leave that night. It's obviously very, very difficult, but they leave. They're able to, basically they run during the day, they run during the day, they sleep they run at night, they sleep during the day, hiding. Takes a couple of days. Eventually, Addie has to save her mother in a river. They get to the train tracks. They're able to get to a woman's house who's part of the Underground Railroad. Addie's has to deal with some soldiers that are not Union soldiers. They're Confederate soldiers. She's able to pretend to be somebody she's not. They're able to get to this woman, Miss Caroline's house. She hides them, feeds them, I think gives them different clothes, and then early in the morning before the soldiers get up, she takes them to a ship that takes them to Philadelphia, which is the North End Freedom, and then they're picked up by a woman and her daughter Sarah, who are part of the one of the churches there, who's helping escaped slaves. Addie's mother is able to get a job as a seamstress, and they are basically move into quarters renting above this woman's shop. So that is the first part of the story. And Addie learns a lesson. This is kind of an interesting story. So Addie starts going to school with Sarah, who's the girl her and her mother had picked up, Addie and her mother. And they meet their teacher, and Addie's learning to read and learning to write. They also meet a girl by the name of Harriet. Now, the class is entirely black. Obviously, you have segregation. The teacher is black as well. The teacher is a former slave from North Carolina. And then there's a girl by the name of Harriet. Now, I can't remember if Harriet was not born in slavery. I don't know if her parents were or if it was her grandparents. But she's very snobbish. She's wealthy in compared to, say, Addie and Sarah. Sarah's mother does laundry. I don't know what her father does. It's never said, but her mother does other people's laundry, and Sarah frequently has to help her. So it is difficult. Both Addie and Sarah's family are very, very, very poor. But Addie gets enamored by Harriet because she's sitting with her, and she ends up you end up with kind of a mean girl situation where Addie is convinced to be Harriet and her friend's lackey, and they treat her badly, and it takes a while for Addie to learn that she's better than that and that it doesn't matter. And Harriet gets reprimanded by the teacher decently several times throughout the story, but eventually Addie beats Harriet in a spelling bee that they have with their class, and Harriet gets mad. And Addie realizes that Sarah is her true friend, and so she gets back to being friends with Sarah and stops being friends with Harriet. So that is this story. And then we had the Bird Book, which is a Christmas story, which is Addie's surprise. Now in this one, you really get to see how poor her and her mother are. Their attic room is cold. She can't use the coal in the morning, so the room is frequently cold. She does start working downstairs and helping with her mother sewing, and she starts doing deliveries for her mother's boss. So, and then they're trying to save up money to buy an oil lamp so her mother can see better when she's sewing at night, because there's a lot of work to do. It's the Christmas season, so they have a lot of orders. So Addie is doing quite a few deliveries, and why her mother's employer does not pay her, she does say Addie gets to keep the tips. So any money that she's given for the delivery, she gets to keep. And so she starts kind of saving some money with her mother and some money because she wants to buy her mother a scarf. But then they realize they kind of want to give money to the church because the church is trying to help people like her and Addie escape slavery. But what ends up happening at the end is one of the people who Addie delivers a dress to, her woman and her daughter come back. The mother is infuriated because the dress doesn't fit because it's too small. Addie, and she blames Addie's mother, and Addie's employer is like, no, she's one of the best seamstresses in town. This dress was based off the measurements we were given. So, guess kind of what happened there. And no, I am not fat shaming here. Obviously, these people were not that overweight, but even putting on a few inches in a dress, and we have no idea how old the girl is. I mean, she could be just hitting puberty, but the mother's, rather than asking to have alterations done, which would be the polite and the intelligent thing to do, she insists on getting her money back, which Addie's mother's employer does, and she doesn't blame Addie's mother. She does end up giving the dress to Addie, and they kind of shorten it a little bit, and Addie uses the excess fabric to make her mother's scarf, because she's also very good at sewing. I do believe, I'm not sure whether it's this story or Happy Birthday Addie, where her friend Sarah ends up not being able to go to, no, it is this one. Her friend Sarah can't go to school anymore because she needs to help her mother with doing the laundry because they're not making enough money. So it's very, very, it's difficult for them. But at the end of the story, the end of the church service, Addie's father shows up. Not her brother. He's like, we were separated not long after we were sold, but he was able to, he wasn't so much escape slavery as like a matter of like days later, the owner just released everybody. So that happened. So that's how her father got north, and he took him a while, but eventually he was able to join them and find them in the north. So that's the end of that story. So, and then Happy Birthday Addie, which is the fourth story. This is when when slavery ends on April 9th of, I believe it's, whether it's 64 or 65. I think it's 1965. But they've moved into a boarding house now because they have more money. Their father's looking for work. He's a very good carpenter, but people don't want to hire him. So he does eventually find somebody who, I think near the end, I don't know whether it's Addie saves the day or in this book where he does find carpenter work. But also what happens in this story, the owner of the boarding house, the male, because it's a couple, his mother moves in. She's blind and she has a bird, and Addie befriends her, and she's the one who's like, you need to pick a birthday. It's like her mother had told her, it's like she was born in spring, but she doesn't know the date, which is kind of common even for a lot of people those days. But then one night they hear cannons booming, and her mother's afraid something's happened. Bad's happened. It's like, no, the war's over. So this is when Robert E. Lee surrenders at Appomattox. So the war is over. The slaves are officially free. And that is what Addie picks for her birthday. But they also realize that free doesn't necessarily mean equal. Her father still has trouble finding a job, and there's still a lot of discrimination. So, but still, it's a happy story. And they celebrate her birthday the day that she chooses. So and again, the war ends, and they start to try to find Addie's brother, and then Lula and Solomon and her baby sister. So that's the gist of that story. Addie saves the day, and unfortunately I need to buy, this is not the matching part of the set. I believe this is the summer story here. Oh, Addie here. I don't remember what happened in this one. This one is they're looking, if I remember correctly, yeah. Her family is starting to, they kind of bought a small piece of ground along with a lot of their other African Americans so they can plant and sell vegetables to help people find their families and help support people who have been freed from slavery. Harriet makes fun of them during the course of this. I think what else. And again, they're constantly, Addie's the one who knows how to read and write. So, and she is teaching her parents, but they're trying to find the rest of their family. So I think I'm going to figure out, it's been a couple of days since they've read them. Yes, this is they have kind of the county fair, and they end up putting on a puppet show. Harriet's not particularly happy about this, and she's kind of been snobby, and the girls, Addie, Sarah, and Harriet get into trouble a little bit because I don't know whether they're fighting or something. But they get in trouble, and they're like, you have to run this for like an hour, the three of you. Just the three of you. Kind of forcing them to work together. Well, next day, Addie finds Harriet crying. And Harriet's always been talking about her uncle, who was fighting in the war, and he's going to come back covered in medals. Well, turns out he died. And she was crying. And Addie's like, I'm sorry. And she eventually tells Sarah. And Addie kind of figures out, it's okay, this is what we need to do. It's like, Harriet, you run basically the numbers. Me and Sarah will run the puppet show. Well, during the course of the puppet show, Sam shows up. He only has an arm. He fought the war. But she gets her brother back. So, and I do believe it's at the end of this one that they find she eventually, yeah. They also, that's the other thing, is some girl tries to steal the mag with the money, and Addie chases her down, and she's able to save their money. And stop this thief. I think that is that the end of this one? I think so. Hold on. Yeah. So, yeah. And that kind of an end with her brother showing up. So that's the end of that one, Addie Saves the Day. So then we have the last book, which is Changes for Addie. So again, they're still looking for her sibling and her baby sister. And her parents are talking about moving to their own apartment, but it costs money and they wouldn't have any extras. They're still trying to pull Addie here. Trying to find her Solomon and Lula and their baby sister Esther. Then kind of near the end, actually I think it's the middle of this story, is where they're searching through the hospitals. Her father does eventually find a job. This is where he finds a job as a carpenter before he was selling ice. So, though this is, I think, that may still a winter story, I'm not sure. A lot of times, most of these are winter stories, and it probably is. But I think the ice thing may have been in the last book. But nonetheless, her father's now working as a carpenter. So, but they're still looking for them. Eventually, Addie is walking home and sees an old woman and a little girl walking down the steps, and she realizes that she's found Auntie Lola and Esther. Uncle Solomon had died not that long before. He was very, very old, which is sad for them. And also, I'm trying to think, Lincoln's died by this point. And Auntie Lola dies not that long after. And they have to, basically, Esther has to get used to being with her family again. And the other thing is, and that's kind of what's showing on the front, is Addie is chosen by her teacher at a church presentation and celebration to read on January 1st, read the Emancipation Proclamation, because that's when it was declared. Lincoln declared that the slaves were free. And she's afraid to do it, but eventually, particularly since Auntie Lola and Solomon are gone, but she's able to read it. The other thing that happens is her aunt, she also gets irritated with her sister. You see her, how Esther is bugging her, though that might be one of the short stories. But that is I believe it's the course of this story. I may be remembering something else from one of the short stories. Yeah. So she's able to read this in front of everyone. So that is is that the end of this story? Because I'm trying to think. It must be one of the short stories that I'm thinking about. Yeah. Auntie Lola dies 2 days after. So, I think that's it. I keep thinking, yeah, that's kind of the end of this story. My brain keeps thinking to one of the short stories. So that is that is Addie's main series. So at the end of it, her family's back together. So it's a very interesting story about families getting freedom at the very end of the American Civil War. So that is it for this review. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. I will be reviewing the rest of Addie's story as the month of July goes on. Though I'm filming this in May. So, again, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you.